Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Star in Focus podcast. We are here at StarCon 24 in Coronado, and we have with us the famous Ed Varallo. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see you here. Good. It was kind of unexpected because you've been retired for a few years now.
I have now been retired for 4 blessed years. And I recommend retirement not to you. You got a lot of years to go.
Oh, I can't wait though.
When you get to retirement age, you should retire.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, you had a very long career, past your retirement age.
Well past my retirement age. I retired in March of 2020. In my 56th year as a court reporter.
That is amazing. What kept you there for 56 years? Almost twice.
Who stays in any field for 50 years? But that should tell you something. It was a very satisfying career.
Yeah.
The job was satisfying. I liked the challenge every day of going out and taking down what everybody said, no matter how fast they talked, no matter how difficult it was. And professionally, it was great because I got to do things like enter speed contests and write a textbook and give seminars, attend conferences like this. That was great.
Yeah.
So the job and the career were wonderful.
That is awesome to hear. And you did, I have your textbook. I highly recommend it.
Do you keep it under your pillow?
Yeah. Sure do. How'd you know?
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So what prompted you to write the textbook?
Well, I was in it for 50 years. So before computer-aided transcription came around in the late 1970s, nobody worried about writing conflict-free for the computer because you transcribed your own notes and the human mind has no issue with conflicts. It was easy to do. But the computer, frankly, is not very smart. Much smarter today, but in 1977, when I first started on the computer, you had to do all the conflict resolution. It was difficult to do prefixes and suffixes. So I worked, and there was no textbook out there at the time, so I worked on creating solutions to the different problems, and I came up with the solutions, and they worked well, and I thought I should put these in a book.
Yeah.
So I've written 2 books. One book I wrote, The Real-Time Writer's Manual, a long time ago, before you were born, 1992. And the second book, the one that I would proud of very much today, Ed Steno Pro, I published at the very end of 2013, and that's a very different book. It's a 300-page book that is specifically about how to create a short system for yourself using briefs, but the important thing about my book is it's entirely devoted to creating briefs that you can actually remember. Because briefs are great, but they're not great if you can't remember them.
Yep.
So I wrote those books because I'd figured out what I thought were good ways to do things and solve problems and make the job easier. And I wanted to pass that on to my fellow court reporters.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a great service. I mean, obviously, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you are able to sell it, but just to create it and decide that you wanted to do that for the community is just a really profound, really.
It's always pleasing to me when I'll get an email from somebody or a text saying, had your book for 2 weeks. It's great. I'm making great strides. That makes me feel really good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what goes into even just writing a book like that? Did you have to have somebody edit it for you? I mean, was it challenging?
Well, my books are no literary masterpieces.
Right.
There's
no plot.
They are textbooks.
Yeah.
Very short on plot. And, but the real answer is I'm an obsessive person. So I keep files. I would have many files on my computer about a particular idea. I'd create a file, I'd put entries into it, see if they worked. Very often they don't work. I've probably got 50 different things that I tried to do that I thought might improve my writing that I decided didn't work.
Yeah.
But the ones that did work, I kept in files. So when I decided in the autumn of 2013, I'm gonna write a book, put it together, I took 3 months off from work and sat in my favorite place in my house with my computer files, some of them printed out. It was a mess. Some of them printed out, some of them just on my screen. And I put it together one after another. One example, as I say to the people who buy my book, and it's in fact in the front of the book, it's 300 pages. The first 27 pages tell you why I think these ideas work and how I think they're going to help you. And then the last 270 pages are one example after another of how to put those ideas into effect. that's what it is.
That's awesome. And it's just such a great service, I feel like, for people that are utilizing it, right? Because the collaboration piece, people being able to, see how you do it and how they can add that, I think is really invaluable.
Well, I tell you, I used to give seminars, and I love giving seminars. I like promoting the idea of writing real time to my fellow court reporters, because the more real time you can do and the better you get at it, the more prestige you have as a reporter, because the lawyers respect what you do.
Right.
When you can put a screen out in front of the lawyers and they can see that you do a really good job first pass, automatically they respect you. So whatever you think of lawyers, they respect competence.
Yeah, sure,
So,
yeah.
And if you're someone who says, oh, I don't want to do real time, I don't want to put the screens in front of a lawyer, get good enough that you can put out a fast, accurate draft transcript within a couple of hours of the end of a deposition or a trial or a hearing, send it out to the attorneys, and when they know that you can do that kind of work and do it fast, again, you get a tremendous amount of respect.
Yeah.
That it helps you in small ways. You can be, I've heard too many reporters say, oh, I had such a terrible day yesterday. They didn't want to take a lunch break, so we went through from 9:30 to 4 with no breaks. Well, I can tell you that never happened to me, because when we get around to lunchtime, they would look at me and they'd say, Ed, we're a little pressed here. Do you want a lunchtime? And the answer is, yes, I do.
Yeah.
What I'd say to them is, I don't want to take too long a lunch break. I know you're in a hurry. How about just a half an hour? And they'd say, okay, fine, we're going to take 30 minutes.
Yes.
They did that because they knew I was doing a good job for them, and they treated me like one of their equals, which I feel like I was.
Yeah.
So getting really good at what you do gets you prestige, gets you respect, and gets you a lunch.
Yeah, I love it. That's the slogan right there, for sure. And I think speaking up for yourself is really important too. And I think that in and of itself could be a whole other seminar, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely agree with you that when you can prove yourself, then you are an asset, and they want to make sure that they continue to have that asset.
Yes, and I would say, especially to young reporters, meaning reporters who've been out there less than 10 years, be the best reporter you can. Get credentials, because lawyers like to see that you have credentials, especially if you're young. Get credentials, take the time to learn real time so you can actually do that, because if you're a freelancer in particular, that's where I spent my life, so I'll just talk about freelancing.
Yeah.
If you're a freelancer and you can do real time and satisfy the agency's clients' needs, you're going to be gold with the agency. They're going to send you out to their good clients, and their good clients are going to request you.
Right.
So that gives you huge job security, not to mention you're going to make a lot of money that other reporters don't make. So when I was reporting, I stopped reporting 4 years ago, I would typically make $50,000 and $60,000 a year just doing real time, not the regular transcripts, but just putting screens up, doing the draft transcripts. I got to be able to do that because the agency would always send me on jobs where the lawyers wanted that, because the agency knew I could do that.
Right, you were the guy. Yeah. So how did you even get into this field?
Well, my family was in the field. My father was a court reporter. My brother was in the field as a transcriber. My uncle was a court reporter. My uncle's 2 sons were a court reporter.
Wow.
So real quickly, I'll tell you what I've told audiences when I'm talking to court reporters for years. I became a court reporter for the worst possible reason. So when I was in high school, I had decided I was going to be a failure at life. And if I ever went to college, I was going to fail and my life would be over, and I didn't want that to happen. So I thought, what can I do that doesn't require a 4-year college degree? Well, I guess I can be a court reporter. My father can't complain about that because he's a court reporter.
Right.
So my decision to be a court reporter is because I wanted to avoid failing at college. So I went to a little court reporting school, really a steno school, in the summer between my junior and senior year in high school.
Oh, wow.
And I discovered 2 things. I loved the machine and I had talent for it. So during my senior year in high school, I practiced at home, took over the dining room table, got my dad and other people to dictate for me, and I practiced. And when I got out of high school, I went right into my uncle's freelance office in Philadelphia. Started out as a student, and he took me out to jobs, and we'd go back to his office and he'd have me read my notes. It was very good training. So I'll tell you, that first year right out of high school, my birthday is in August. So it was in June I started in my uncle's office. Right 3 or 4 days before my birthday, I would have been 18 on that birthday, he said, Ed, I'm going to let you go take your first deposition because someday you're going to want to tell your kids you took your first deposition at the age of 17. So my kids haven't cared about that a bit. But the fact is, I took my first job at the age of 17.
That is very impressive. Very impressive. So,
actually, it's scary. Do any of us have kids that we'd want to go take a job at 17?
I mean, well, I was working, but at 15, but it was not.
Whoa.
It was not as a reporter. I had to have a work permit, but that was also because I needed money. I wanted money. I wanted a car. That kind of a thing. So, but anyways, dang it, I lost my train of thought. But about your briefs, because you come from a family of reporters. Did they stroke everything out? Like, was this innovative for you? Or
back in the day when my dad was a court reporter and my uncle, they wrote out more so than we do nowadays, or at least more so than I would promote. My dad happened to be a beautiful writer. I still have some of his notes because they were so clean and he punctuated everything. I always admired the way he wrote. And when I was a very beginning reporter in my first year, I decided I'm not going to write anything differently from the way my dad writes it. I eventually changed my mind about that, but I really admired the way he did it. My uncle was the first stenographer in the Pennsylvania court system. 1939, he was the first stenotypist in the court system, and the Pittman writers did not want him there, and they objected to him, and
I don't know what a Pittman writer is.
Pittman shorthand. Pittman shorthand, okay. Greg shorthand. They were Pittman shorthand writers. Okay. So the shorthand writers didn't want these newfangled machines out there because you can't trust them, and they don't have the qualifications. They're not really professionals. All the kind of things you hear now and then from people in our field today. So it's a lesson. You should accept what comes along when new things come along. They have something to offer.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really poignant, relevant, historical fact to sort of remind people of. Like, this is kind of a pattern that we get into when new technology comes out. Whatever that might be at the time, people are generally very reactive in not a positive way.
That's because we're all afraid of change, and I understand that people are afraid of change. And I must admit, I didn't adopt some of the technologies that came out because I had convinced myself I didn't need them. But frankly, if I were to be staying in this field for another 5 or 10 years, you bet I'd be adopting them. I would want to use them.
Yeah. Well, if they make your life easier, right?
Yeah.
That's the entire point, is to make your life easier,
right.
Your job easier. And I am all about doing things
because as much as I love doing my job, I'm happy to get it done and go do something else.
Yeah, exactly. So how has retirement been for you? What are you doing with all your free time?
First of all, I was a workaholic for my 56 years because I think most really good court reporters are workaholics. So when I retired, I thought, am I really going to be able to do this? Because I don't have any second acts planned. I just want to retire.
Right.
So it took me about 24 hours to get comfortable being retired.
I love that.
I loved it. So what do I do now? I get to read, and I get to read things that don't have numbered lines 1 through 25 down there. I like reading history. I'm finally getting a chance to read history. I'm a walker, so I like to take 4 and 5 and 6 mile walks. I love that. And I took up pickleball about 3 years ago, and I'm a ping pong player. I played ping pong all my life, played well. So this has taken the place of ping pong, and I love it. I'm out 4 days a week playing pickleball.
That's very cool.
And if my wife asks me to do something, of course I do it. So that's right.
Right. Yeah, it's a good use of your time, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
And your wife, for those of us that, I know her, but, our audience may not. She is the also famous Nancy Varallo.
Nancy Varallo runs the Varallo Group, which is now the association manager for STAR. But Nancy Varallo is a big name in court reporting. She has been involved in her state association for years, was on the board of NCRA and the president of NCRA in 2013. And in fact, Nancy and I have been together 29 years. When I met Nancy, she was on the board of our state association in Massachusetts, and she and I disagreed on one of the controversial issues of the day. So she was divorced at the time and I was divorced at the time. So we just knew each other professionally. She decided she needed to get me on her side in this issue of the day. And so she invited me to join her on whatever committee we were working on. And that's how our relationship started, because she was trying to convince me to come around to her point of view. So
and did she?
So she symbolized the old phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Right, yes.
It worked.
It
yes.
did, I'll say.
Yeah.
And so now are you guys aligned in your sort of thoughts?
Absolutely, yes. And it was it's a subject that's gone away. It's no longer a controversial issue, but in those days, people had two different views of it. Nancy and I have worked together professionally for years, especially when she was going out doing seminars as president of our association. In the years since I wrote my book in 2013, I've been invited to go see seminars to state associations, and invariably Nancy and I will go together, and usually Nancy will give a seminar. So it's actually been professionally and personally fun. We'd go away on a Friday, come home on a Sunday or a Monday, and we've been to, I think I counted them one time, about 38 states over the last 8 or 9 years giving seminars. And it was fun.
Yeah,
Enjoyed
that's
it.
a really great accomplishment.
Yeah.
And how did you guys come up with the Varallo Group?
It's Nancy's business. I'm not in it at all. I've worked as a freelancer for agencies in Boston, and Nancy started this company, the Varallo Group, many years ago. It had a different name at one time, and she changed it to the Varallo Group quite a while ago, 15 years ago. She wanted to run that kind of a business. It's a non-traditional court reporting agency because she doesn't have lawyers as clients. She has other court reporting agencies as clients. She supplies court reporters, and more importantly, she supplies the back office requirements. Answer the phone, schedule the lawyer, schedule the deposition, get a videographer, get a room at a hotel if that's necessary, get the exhibits from the people, from the court reporters when the job's done, do all the production.
Yeah.
There are a lot of court reporting agencies who need that kind of service. So that's really the brunt of her business these days, the back office operation.
Which is really smart and obviously successful.
Very successful. And now she's branching out into association management, and I think that's going well for her.
It's going really well for me,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
Well, it's going well for me. I come here and I have no obligation, but I can go to all the events where they have free food and drinks.
Yeah, exactly. And pickleball, right?
And
that's where
pickleball,
it's at.
I'm doing that.
So tell me a little bit about Project Steno. How did that get started?
Project Steno got started, 7-8 years ago by 5 people. Nancy and I were 2 of those 5 people. It was the brainchild of Jim DiCrescenzo, a court reporter from Philadelphia. The idea was stenographic court reporting is the premier way of doing court reporting, as Anir Dutta, the president of Stenograph, said in the business meeting today. But we are going to be replaced by other means of doing the record, digital recording of one kind or another, because there are not enough of us and not nearly enough people are going into the field.
Right.
So Project Steno was started for the purpose of trying to publicize the fact that stenographic court reporting is still a very valid, viable career, and it's a really good career, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Or they think, oh, stenography, well, that's yesterday's technology, and
Sure.
digital is going to take over.
Yeah.
So the idea was we're going to advertise the fact that this still exists as a career, and it's a good career. We're not going to be shoved aside by any superior technology. In fact, they are trying to do the job as well as we can do it, and they are learning to be able to do that. We also figured out after a couple of years, Deanna, that we needed to target kids in high school before they and their parents select college and what they're going to study in college. Because once they decide they're going to go to college and study whatever it is they want to study, they're not interested in hearing about court reporting. So we have targeted high school students. My wife, Nancy, is a very organized and brilliant woman, and she wrote a program that was called A to Z, which was a program that could be put on for free where if a student wanted to try out a machine and see whether they liked the idea of writing on a keyboard, 1 day a week over the course of 6 weeks, they'd sign on and do some very basic stroking on the keyboard, learning some basic stuff. But at the end of 6 weeks, they would either know, yeah, I might like this, or I don't like this at all, the heck with that.
Yeah.
That was a really good idea. Nancy then expanded that into something she calls basic training, very similar program. It has worked tremendously well because it vets the students who are likely to succeed, separating them from the ones who won't succeed. You probably know that one of the major reasons we haven't been able to recruit people into stenographic court reporting is because we have such a low graduation rate.
Yes.
It's like 7% of people who start graduate. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, with Project Steno vetting the people who go through this basic training and then promoting to them, you should go to a stenographic school, and we tell them what stenographic schools are out there. We have had about a 50% graduation rate of the people who go through Project Steno and then go on to Steno school. Because once you get rid of the people who just don't have the talent for writing on a machine, you get a reasonable graduation rate.
Yeah.
So it's working. It's too little too late in the sense that we're not going to be able to get thousands of stenographers out into the field. But digital recording is here, and that's getting better and better. So we're going to work side by side with them. Anybody who wants to go into stenographic reporting today can expect to have a 20-year career without trouble, maybe even longer.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you have 56, so you know, the sky is the limit, which I really like about this career. It's really your entire, opportunity, your reach, your depth, all of those things are really personal, and whatever you want to do with it is entirely up to you. And I think that is monumental and really, at least in the freelance world, but you have the choice of whether you want to do freelance and you were always a freelancer.
I was always, except for 3 years, I worked in the Court of Chancery in Wilmington, Delaware, which is a very interesting court. It's an equity court. So we did business litigation, stockholder derivative suits, very interesting. But I have to say just one thing, because I like to promote our field of court reporting.
Yeah.
And whether you're a digital reporter or a stenographic reporter, one of the real attractions to me of my entire long career was I got to do the job from beginning to end. I wasn't a cog in the machine, middle management, or just doing one little piece of the task.
Right.
I got to go out with my equipment to the job, deposition or a hearing, set up my equipment, take the deposition or the hearing, bring the exhibits back, do the transcript, have somebody proofread it, then I would make corrections on their proofreading. I would prepare the transcript, send it to the agency, and I'm done. That's a very satisfying piece of work to do because I get to see the whole thing. I did it from the very beginning to the end, and it is something that satisfied me day after day, year after year. And I've heard a lot of people who have nice jobs working in law or in banking or in software development who express some dissatisfaction that they only get to do a piece of it and they don't actually know how the project that they worked on turned out.
Right, yeah.
So it's, I think for anybody, I don't know who's going to watch what we're doing today, but anybody who might be thinking about court reporting as a career, please investigate it. It's a very satisfying way to have a career, and they pay you pretty well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to touch on how you were talking about getting to do something from beginning to end, and I completely agree with you. What I don't like is when I only get to take one side. It's plaintiff, deponent, and then I want to see how it ends.
That has to do with I want to know how this trial comes out, how this case comes out. Well, long ago, years and years ago, I finally got over that and said, I'm not going to know how these things turn out.
Yeah.
It's just going to be that way.
Yeah.
I have heard plenty of court reporters say, I don't want to be a freelancer because you never know how the cases turn out. I want to work in a courtroom where I do the trial from beginning to end and I know what happens.
Right.
And I say, well, okay, then work in a courtroom.
Yeah, and there are a lot of perks to working in the courtroom for sure. I really like having the option to do either or, because like you had said, it's with Project Steno, different people have different skill sets and different, you just hone in on what you're good at. And
exactly.
I think that's a really remarkable thing that our career allows us to do.
You know, I spent most of my life as a freelancer, so I feel comfortable talking about that. You know what goes on in a court. We have civil trials and criminal trials. In freelancing, we don't have anything, no criminal work except in a few state jurisdictions, but there are different kinds of work in freelancing, and you get to know what it is you like to do.
Yeah.
So I found out what it is I like to do, and that's what I tried to concentrate on. So maybe 50 or 60% of my work was always in the field that I liked doing. I like doing technical patent work and business litigation. It may sound boring to you to do business litigation, but it's really not, because business litigation is people involved in complex business affairs, and when you take depositions in these business cases, you're unraveling who did what and why didn't it work.
Yeah.
Well, now you can point out, oh, I can listen to it and say, oh, that wasn't a good idea when they did that, because that's going to create a problem.
Right.
I enjoyed that. Other
Yeah.
people like personal injury work. There's plenty of that.
There is. My personal favorite is construction defect. And
That's great stuff.
I
Great
like
stuff.
it. Yeah, I just feel like it's easy for me to write. You know, I have a lot of briefs for that language, and I just,
Well, once you get, as you know, writing verbatim is all about not just speed, it's all about being familiar with the vocabulary you hear.
Yes.
Once you get familiar with that, you can write it well. I did a lot of patent work in Boston in microbiology.
Oh, wow.
Kind of difficult, but
Yeah.
once you do it enough times, you get a bunch of briefs for the words and phrases you hear frequently. Having those briefs at your command allows you a little extra time when you hear something new that's really tough to write.
Yeah.
I got good at that. It wasn't as hard for me to do as it was for a newcomer just trying to do it, because I heard all this vocabulary.
Right. It's already in your dictionary, in your mind, like you
Right.
said, the briefs,
It's in
all
your
that
mind.
stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I love is that our dictionaries now allow us, you know, words that I've never heard, I can write it and it will come up, you know, and
Wow.
I
Yeah.
love that so
Wow.
much. I feel like it's a nice, one of the benefits of technology, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
it is.
another
That's right.
thing that
Yeah.
really helps.
Well, the technology is getting developed. It's really great. It's going to get even better and give you more help like that. So that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Well, I usually like to ask people if they have any special tidbits. Like, is there any, you know, specific words of wisdom that you would tell, you know, somebody that is, you know, like you said, in high school? What is
Well-
something that you might want to make sure that they know about this field?
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I might say I would always give the advice to any court reporter, but again, especially the younger court reporters, get your credentials, because
Yes.
credentials are important. And secondly, this may sound kind of trivial, but dress well for the job.
I think it's important.
So, I mean, from all my years as a reporter, I wore a white shirt and a tie and a jacket and a suit. Well, maybe that kind of formal business attire is going away, but please don't go out there in jeans or shorts the way I see some people.
Yes.
Business casual at the minimum, but dress well, because that shows everybody you take the job seriously. And if you take the job seriously, the lawyers and the witnesses are going to tend to take you seriously.
Yeah, I
so
agree.
you send a signal by the way you dress for the job.
Yes.
It's really important to do that. And the other thing is join organizations like STAR, because that's where you meet other professionals doing your job. You're going to learn things that you don't know because you've only been exposed to whoever you've been exposed to in your
Right.
area. And it's also social. I've made friends that are still lifelong friends that I've made in the business. We get together, not frequently, but they're really good friends. I'm happy to see them, and you can have fun. I mean, there's equal parts socializing and business at a convention like this, and it's a lot of fun. Here we are in San Diego. It's beautiful. I could write this off on my tax returns. This is
That's
great.
the win.
Yeah. So enjoy it. Make sure you enjoy the field. Enjoy what you're doing. It's a great career.
I think those are wonderful words of wisdom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sitting
Nice to
down
talk
with
to.
us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, it's been a pleasure. And thank you guys for checking it out. We will see you next time.